Welcome back, friends. This is Yvonne Davis. I'm an author, astrologer, and life transformation coach. And this is my channel where I do general astrology and political astrology. So today we're going to do a video on, can Trump survive this? Will Trump survive this? That's a very interesting question. And we're going to look at that today. So before we get started, if you are interested in my 6-week astrology workshop, you can look at the link below and you can either buy the workshop by itself, or if you want to do the package where you get an hour-long reading with me, you get both at a discount. And then, of course, at any time, if you're just interested in a reading, you can always click on the link below. So check those things out. And then also, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, click like on this video, share with friends and family and on social media, and please leave your comments. All right, so let's go and look at that first chart. And I was looking at a couple of things. The two primary charts I'm looking at are the chart for the United States. This is the Declaration of Independence, and then Donald Trump's chart. And we see some interesting things going on in both of those charts. So let's see. First thing we want to look at is the Venus retrograde, because there's a combination of two planets or two events, and one of them is the Venus retrograde. The other one is the full moon eclipse on June 5th. So I think actually we probably want to look at what's happening with Donald Trump and the Venus retrograde first. So let's go ahead and look at that. All right, so I want to start with what's happening right now today as I'm making this video, and also this weekend, because in my last video, if you haven't seen it, there'll be a link at the end of this video that you can click on that and you can go back and watch that. And the other thing is, okay, so let's start. Yesterday was March 20th, and I made a video and I talked about the fact that Mars and Jupiter were conjunct, which is generally fine. I mean, the Jupiter can intensify the Mars energy, and that was one thing that I was slightly concerned about. But it has a lot to do with the other planets surrounding it. So the real problem is Mars moving into conjunction with Pluto. And this can represent a multitude of things. It can impact the virus, causing an expansion of the virus. It can increase the militarism that we're experiencing in the state right now with the lockdown. It can increase anger. I think there's a lot of anger in the American population, and it's just boiling below the surface. Now, you personally may not be feeling angry. If you are, actually, you can leave that in the comments. I would like to know. But there are a lot of people in this country who are feeling really, really angry. And right now, it's just sort of bubbling underneath the surface. And that's why I said in my last video that I did not want you to go out this weekend, because I think that there could be pockets of violence breaking out. And if it's not violence amongst people, it will be the virus. Okay, so the threat coming from the Mars-Pluto conjunction is really, really intense this weekend. And then on top of that, we're having the new moon in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, conjunct Chiron, squaring the nodes. So it's intensifying that Mars-Pluto conjunction. So this is going to take place over the weekend, which we're experiencing right now. And then on Monday and Tuesday, I think it's really going to flare up in a more public way. And we're going to continue to see problems with the stock market and the economy. So we're in trying times right now. But today, March 21st, when I'm making this video, Saturn has moved into Aquarius. And you can see here, even with the May 13th Venus retrograde chart, you can see that Saturn has moved into Donald Trump's 7th house. The interesting thing is that the moment of the Venus retrograde, about the same day, almost the same day, Saturn goes retrograde as well. And that is at 1 degree, 57 minutes of Aquarius. Now, the issue with Saturn in his 7th house is that it contracts. It creates limitations and contractions. And it does that because it's trying to remove things that are not functioning properly. It tries to remove the weakest links when it first moves into a sign or a house. And so he's losing support because it's trying to teach him why he's losing support. I doubt he'll learn the lesson because he never seems to learn his lessons, but that's what it will do. I think the other meaning of Saturn in Aquarius has to do with infrastructure and logistics. So Saturn is all about authority and structure. So it's definitely infrastructure, and it has something to do with Aquarius, which can be communication infrastructure, the internet. I think we're actually going to have some challenges with the communication infrastructure, particularly the internet, because so many people will be using the internet at a much more intense level than they were before. And so that's going to be challenging for the infrastructure to handle the level of traffic that it will experience. So that Saturn in Aquarius is going to bring that problem. In his 7th house, it will bring a loss of support. And also there's this issue of logistics. And I think part of the reason why he's going to lose support is because like in a recent press conference, apparently there was this Department of Health and Infectious Diseases that was part of the NSA, and so when he came into office, it was disbanded, and now they need it. And so instead of just saying, okay, we're going to recreate it, he, of course, had to take offense because he sees everything as conflict, and he called it a deep state department. And so the problem with Donald Trump is that he needs this structure. He needs the Saturn institution structure. Saturn is the things that have been there for a long time because they are strong. There's a strong foundation around authority, and there's a sense of, over time things mature. That's what creates authority, is that when you've gone through a lot of challenges, and that's what Saturn brings, you end up with a very strong foundation that's based in maturity and authority. And he is at war with that. He has always been at war with that. And that's exactly what he needs, though, in order to help us get through this crisis. And so he's made himself an enemy of the very institutions and people and structures that he needs. So that's why he's losing support. And also because the people, these doctors and public health officials and, all the people who work in these industries of healthcare and public health and epidemiology, they understand this stuff and they will not put up with his crap. So that's going to be a problem for him. And so we'll see how that all pans out. And then the other issue is that the nodes change signs in May. And so you can see they've already changed signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, which is going to be important when we reach the eclipse, the first eclipse of the summer, which is June 5th. And I showed you the chart for the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic and how it landed on the U.S. chart. So if you haven't seen that, I'll see if I can get a link and put it up above so you can check that out too, if you haven't seen it. Okay, so let's see what else we need to look at. So in his chart, what's happening with the Venus retrograde. So basically, this is where we're at right now. Today, as I'm making this video, it's March 21st. Saturn is going to move into Aquarius tonight. It's going to bring the effects that I said it's going to bring. And here we are now in the future. I'm looking at May 13th. So you may wonder, well, what happens between March 21st and May 13th? Well, I told you what's going to happen in the next 4 days: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And I think it will stretch out until next weekend as well. It'll start to get better next weekend. And then the government is talking about issuing checks on by April 6th, I think is the deadline that they're looking at, which correlates perfectly with the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which is April 4th. So hopefully that will happen and you can get some financial relief that can help you to achieve your goals, because this weakness impacts all of us. And what I mean by weakness is it's showing us the weaknesses in our system, the weaknesses in our own life. And so we have an opportunity now to look at that and to make adjustments. So I'm hoping that they will send out that money so that you guys can do with it whatever you feel you need to do. And so, and then April, I think people will start to think things are getting better in April. And I think it may get more lax in some ways. But the irony is that actually what will happen is, especially as we get to May with the Venus retrograde, the virus will actually begin to spread more because of this attitude that things are getting better, that they're going back to normal, and people start to get more lax. And that's actually what's going to cause the problem when Venus goes retrograde. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Looking at Donald Trump's chart, you see Pluto over his vertex in his 6th house of body and work, opposite Venus in his 12th house. Now, the interesting thing is that the houses being activated are the 6th house of work and body, the 12th house of endings, and the 8th house. The 8th house rules birth, death, and joint assets. The 6th, 8th, and 12th house are considered the 3 most difficult houses in the zodiac. And all 3 are being activated for him. And I'll explain what that means. So Pluto, all planets have a light side and a shadow side. Pluto is the god of death. And so, but Pluto doesn't always it can bring literal death, but it can also bring transformation. So death and rebirth, regeneration. And, but sometimes it does actually bring literal death. So it's in his 6th house of work and body over his vertex, which is fate, opposite his Venus. And this is very important because Venus, most of us, we always talk about the light side of Jupiter and Venus because they're the benefics, but they have shadow sides too. And the shadow side of Venus is all things venal. It's venal, the same thing, the same root of the word Venus is also in venal and venereal. And so I'm not saying venereal disease, but I am saying that, it's like when we hear the word venereal, that's what we automatically think of, venereal disease. But I'm not saying it's going to be venereal disease. I'm just saying that Venus has a shadow side, and it's all things venal. And so, so when you take Pluto, the god of death, and you put it in the 6th house of work and body on somebody's vertex, which is fate, opposite their Venus in the 12th house of endings, and you're activating the shadow side of Pluto and Venus, it can lead to things like death and things that are venal. Okay, so the other issue that we need to look at here is the Mars moving into Pisces. This is going to be very problematic. But at the time, and also Chiron in Aries, which will come up later, but it's already activating. It's opposite his natal Neptune. And so Neptune is illness and confinement. Mars is inflammation, infection, and fever. So the combination of the two is going to be very, very bad. That's why we need to be very careful and not assume that the virus is gone, because it will come back with a vengeance when Venus goes retrograde, and then we have the eclipse on June 5th. And even if it's not visible right away when Venus goes retrograde, because usually one of the things that happens with Venus retrograde is that people think everything looks rosy and shiny on the surface, and it's actually not. So it may be hidden under the surface, and it won't erupt until the June 5th eclipse. But see, look at here with Venus right over his sun and North Node. And it's going to cross over his Uranus too. So it's crossing over all three of these planets as it goes retrograde. And it's, his retrograde point is right over his sun and his North Node. So this is a very personal thing for him, and squaring Neptune. Okay, so that's how I know. Now, before, when I was making predictions, I didn't know that what this was going to be the virus. I thought it was just going to be all the deception that was coming up. The lies, the deception, the fake news, all of that stuff, because that's what would make sense in with these alignments in a political election year. But now that we know the virus is out there and it's spreading and it's killing people, it's very obvious that this is the virus. This is the illness. And so we need to watch what these planets are doing. And it was catalyzed by Uranus in Taurus. And that has to do with the body and the economics and everything material and physical. And we knew that Uranus was going to do something to bring about transformation. But because Uranus is the planet of shocks and surprises, and it's unpredictable, it brings change and disruption and chaos. But the biggest, most important thing to always remember about Uranus, even though it's going to bring change, it's going to bring revolution, it's going to turn things upside down, bring disruption and shocks, surprises, and chaos, all that, but you never know exactly how it's going to do that, because it's a planet of unpredictability. And that's how I know, now that we found out about this illness and this contagion, now I know that it was Uranus that catalyzed it. So anyway, just have a look at this again real quick. Pluto, the god of death, in a sixth house of work and body, on his vertex, which is fate, opposite Venus in her shadow side in the 12th house, because 12th house is ruled by Neptune. It also rules illness and confinement and endings. And we're looking at the shadow side of Venus, which is all things venal. So that's pretty harsh. And he's still got that that finger of God pointing to his vertex and to Pluto in the sixth house of work and body. And then Venus also relates to Uranus in Taurus, because she rules Taurus, and Pluto rules the eighth house of death, and Neptune is in the eighth house. For him, it's Pisces. Neptune in Pisces magnifies the Pisces energy, which means it can magnify both the light side and the shadow side. So it's really intense right now. And now Mars, which also rules the military, and we are moving into a military type lockdown. It also rules inflammation, infection, and fever. So it's moving into conjunction with Neptune in Pisces. So that's the illness, that's the confinement. So it's really manifesting in two forms. One is the militaristic lockdown, the confinement, and the other is the illness itself, when Mars conjoins Neptune in this water sign of Pisces in his eighth house of death. You've got the combination of Mars, ruler of inflammation, infection, and fever, conjunct Neptune, ruler of illness and confinement, in a water sign, particularly Pisces, because it's magnified with Neptune in Pisces. And that's a water sign, because, and that's important to consider because of the fact that the virus infects the bodily fluids and the cells. And so, you know, it moves through the bodily fluids. It's transmitted through droplets. So the water aspect is extremely important where this is concerned. So that's going to be especially big deal when we get to the eclipse. But right now, already with Venus retrograde at 21 degrees, 50 minutes, right over his Sun and North Node, squaring Neptune and Pisces. Okay, let me just make it very clear. He is going to get the illness. I feel very, very confident about making that prediction because this is impacting him so personally. I do not see how, in the midst of this situation and a number of people he's constantly interacting with as president of the United States, I mean, his circle of encounters is vast, and there are all kinds of people, and it's like, and a lot of them come from foreign countries. I mean, he meets people from all walks of life at the various functions that he attends, press conferences, rallies. A lot of these things are not going to be able to continue, but I think that he will try to continue them because he sees those as his lifeblood. But the fact that his circle of encounters is so vast and so wide-ranging, he's virtually guaranteed to contract this illness. And then also with these alignments, it's like, how could I possibly look at, this is what I'm saying to myself, how could I possibly look at these alignments and think he's not going to catch the illness? I mean, this Neptune is squaring Venus almost exactly right over his Sun and North Node. I mean, in my mind, there is only one answer. He is going to contract the illness. Absolutely. I feel comfortable making that prediction, just like when I made the prediction that he would be impeached. I said that all the way back in July of 2019 that he would be impeached, and we didn't even get the whistleblower's complaint until September. So, and that's what ultimately led to his impeachment. So I'm making a prediction that I feel very confident about. He is going to contract the illness. And not only is it on his Sun and his North Node, it's also opposite his Moon and his South Node. And the Moon is playing a very important role in this because the Moon is a water sign. The Moon is all about water, and Neptune in Pisces is all about water. And the Moon rules Cancer, and his Venus is in Cancer, and Venus rules Taurus, and Uranus is in Taurus. So all of these things are connected together. And the Sun is in Taurus right over his midheaven. And that's what that says to me, is that there will be a public announcement that he's contracted the illness. It's making a quincunx down here to his Moon and his South Node, or possibly children. That's the other possibility. And if it's children, it would more likely be his female children, because it's the Moon, but not 100%. I'm not saying only, I'm not even saying his children will contract it. I'm saying with these kinds of alignments, that significantly increases the chances that they will catch it. And because this is the Moon, and Moon generally rules females, that it could more likely, the chances are even higher that it will be his female children. So, yeah, but this will be made public with the Sun right there over his midheaven. It will be publicly announced. It won't be hidden. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to look at. And then the second thing will be the eclipse itself. But I think that's what I'll do. I'll just bring up the eclipse on his chart. Okay, and then we'll go back and we'll look at the US chart and see how both of these land on the US chart. Okay, so here you see this, that Venus had gone retrograde at 21 degrees right over his sun and north node, squaring Neptune. And by the way, Venus crossed over all these degrees. So this is very important, because now she's at 12 degrees. So that means she crossed over all 3 of these degrees. Well, she didn't quite get to 22 degrees in his sun, but close enough to consider that a conjunction. So for the Venus retrograde to land in a conjunction to his sun, absolutely he is going to contract this illness. I'm banking my career on this. Okay. So anyway, when it goes retrograde, I mean, it's still retrograde at 12 degrees, 18 minutes. So you can see that it crossed over all of these degrees, stopped here right over his sun, and then moved back over the degrees. And then the third time it will move back over them again. So it will cross these degrees and these degrees down here 3 times. So it's impacting him in a very, very personal way. And, you know, the fact that the sun rules Leo also means that his first house, Leo, the sun is the dispositor of his first house, Leo. Dispositor means that it disposes of the energy into that house, and it's his first house of self. So that tells me, again, and plus the sun is also considered the self. So that tells me that, yes, he is definitely going to contract this illness. And the moon rules his 12th house. And as I was pointing out to you, that's very highly activated by Pluto over here in his 6th house of work and body. So, and also Mercury is in the 12th house over his natal Mercury. It's making a Mercury conjunction, a Mercury return in Cancer, full moon eclipse, ruler of Cancer, dispositor of his 12th house, Cancer. And Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So all of these things are tied together. And Venus is in his 12th house, and it's the ruler of Taurus, and Uranus is in Taurus. You can also see here that it's conjunct the vertex. Again, vertex is fate. So he will contract it suddenly and unexpectedly. At least that will be the way that they experience it. That it will appear to be sudden and unexpected, but it's fated. Okay, so again, this eclipse is right over his natal full moon eclipse. He was born on a full moon eclipse, and this eclipse is right over his full moon eclipse. Conjunct Venus, which is very venal right now when it's retrograde, and squaring Mars, moving into conjunction with Neptune in Pisces in his 8th house of death. So, so again, Pluto, ruler of death, is in his 6th house of work and body over his vertex opposite his Venus in the 12th house, ruled by Neptune, which Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, the 12th house. All things, first of all things hidden, but also illness, confinement, and endings. And that exact square of Mars is going to be very problematic, not just for him, but also for the nation and for a lot of us personally. I've mentioned multiple times that I too am going to be impacted personally by this eclipse, this June 5th eclipse, because my sun is at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So, oh God, I'm not looking forward to that. It's me personally who gets sick. I am not looking forward to that. All right. But I don't want to make this about me. I just want you to let you know that, like, I'm not just talking in theory. I'm going to experience this firsthand. So, so with this square of Mars here in Pisces moving into conjunction with Neptune, and this eclipse over his, and this is an exact square, by the way, 15 degrees. Yeah, this is intense. And he's definitely going to contract the illness. There's no doubt about that. So I think what I'll do now is that I will take this and look at these charts on the chart of the United States. So let me go pull up that chart real quick, and then we'll see how Venus lands on how Venus retrograde lands on the U.S. chart, and then how the eclipse lands on the U.S. chart. Okay, so down here, this is the economy, the 8th house, and Pluto, again, being the god of wealth and death and plutocracy, which is the ruler. A plutocracy is when the rulers are the wealthy. So just like democracy is the demos, the people. So democracy is ruled by the people for the people. Plutocracy is ruled by the wealthy for the wealthy, which is the truth about our country, really. I mean, you know, we do have a lot of democratic aspects, but the truth is, when they talk about freedom and democracy and anything else to do with this country, and our institutions and our constitution and our values, the truth is it is ruled by the wealthy for the wealthy. And all you have to do is look at it, even though sure they're going to, you know, give some money to people, they're going to send out checks and stuff like that. But the wealthy in this country are going to benefit significantly. They always do, you know. This is socialism for the wealthy. And that's one of the things that needs to transform. And it will. So Pluto brings death and transformation and initiation and regeneration. So when it makes its conjunction to its natal Pluto, that's what it's bringing. It's already moving in that direction. You can see Jupiter here is conjunct Pluto, both natal and transiting. So we're already seeing the process, and it's starting to happen now. And then again with the nodes in Gemini and Cancer, Gemini and Sagittarius, that's where they were during the 1918 flu pandemic. And you can go back and look at that video that I made. So, so at the time of this, in the 7th house of others, so for the United States, that's the people of the country. Venus retrograde is conjunct Mars when it goes retrograde. Okay. So, so just like it's impacting Donald Trump very personally, it's impacting the people of this country. And with it hitting Mars, that means it impacts everything related to Mars. So again, I was telling you, Mars rules inflammation, infection, and fever. And it's activated transiting by its movement through Pisces into a conjunction with Neptune. So this is the illness, this is the virus, okay? And it's being activated and catalyzed by Uranus in the 6th house Taurus, which is the body public, okay? And the workforce. So Venus ruler of Taurus, again, that's the dispositor. So it disposes its energy into the 6th house of work and body of the country. So it's the workforce, it's the body public. And she's in retrograde, so she's in her shadow venal stage, and she's activating Mars. Again, Mars can be the infection and the inflammation and the fever, especially in here when it's moving through here. It's more activated in that way with the illness and the confinement, but also it rules all things militaristic. So the militaristic lockdown is part of that too. Not just because that's what it means, but also because it's moving into conjunction with Neptune, which is confinement. And we're basically being put into a kind of militaristic lockdown and confinement because of the virus. So let's see what else. So yeah, it's impacting the nation in a very public way. So if you want more information on this, definitely go back and look at my other video. The one last thing I'll mention is here, up here, the vertex is conjunct Neptune, opposite Neptune. And so, and this is also the land, the fatherland. So the illness has reached the fatherland. And this is, I would talked before about how this Neptune opposite Neptune is an activation of a reevaluation of values because of the opposition. We're divided. We're divided in our values, and so this is also bringing that more to our awareness. Now, we already knew that was going to happen regardless of this viral infection, but this is also part of catalyzing that reassessment of values, okay? And this is going to take us all the way through 2020 to the election. It's going to impact the election, which I've also talked about in other videos and will continue to talk about. And the alignments on Inauguration Day. So I've also talked about that in other videos. So since I can't, I mean, it would be a lot for me to try to put links all above. I'll try to put some in, some links above and also at the end of this video. But really, if you haven't seen those videos or if you don't remember what I've said in those videos, go back and look for them. And, you know, if you're kind enough to do this, it would be helpful to all of us if you find a video about these things that I'm talking about that I already made, to put it in the comments, like make a comment and put it in as a link in the comments, because that way when other people are reading the comments, then they can go straight to that video, because it's like a huge giant puzzle, and these are all different pieces of the puzzle. And so, you know, I mean, I've made hours and hours and hours of videos about this subject. And so I can't, like, if I put that all in one video, it will be way too long. So I have to just break it up into different pieces. But when you look at them all together, it creates this mosaic, like this huge jigsaw puzzle, and all the pieces fit together. Okay, so again, you can see it's impacting the U.S. in a very, very, very personal way, with the nodes shifting signs, the same signs they were in during the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. Venus is stopping retrograde, stationing retrograde right on top of the nation's Mars in the 7th house, which is the public. Looks like Mercury is also going to activate Uranus, and this Venus here stationing retrograde over Mars in the 7th house of others, which basically just means the general population of the country, is making an exact square here to this Neptune opposition, with Neptune here, down here. This is the fatherland. The illness has reached the fatherland, and it's causing us to, it's activating a public reassessment of our values, which will again lead to the transformation that Pluto will bring when it makes its exact conjunction to its natal Pluto, and that Saturn will make in 2021, early 2021, Inauguration Day, in fact, when it squares Uranus. It will bring a revolution. Okay, so this is all part of it. It's all unfolding. And now let's go and look at how the eclipse lands on the US chart. Okay, so there you see the full moon is right over the ascendant of the US, and the Sun and Venus retrograde are conjunct in the 7th house of others, meaning the general population. The nodes are still there, just like they were in 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. And they're making an exact square to Mars, inflammation, infection, fever, moving into conjunction with Neptune, which is also the illness and confinement, making an exact square. Okay, So it's going to impact us in a very personal way, both the ascendant and the Mars. And Mercury is up here in Cancer. Again, the moon itself rules Cancer, and the most important planet in a full moon eclipse is the moon itself. And so it rules Cancer, and this is up here in the 8th house of death. And Mercury, which rules Gemini, is making a conjunction to Jupiter. And so I know you guys still want to know, I said he was going to get the illness, but I didn't actually say whether or not he was going to die from it. And I don't think he is going to die. And I say that because of what's coming after this eclipse. The eclipse is definitely the illness. There's no doubt in my mind about that. This is the epidemic. It's just like, it's the flu epidemic, just like the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918, because there are so many similarities astrologically. There's just absolutely no doubt in my mind that that's what it is. But it's these things that bring about the transformation that Pluto is bringing, and the regeneration that Pluto is bringing, and the revolution in the structures of our country and the institutions of our country, when these two are squaring, Uranus here and Saturn here. And this is very fated, okay? So why do I say he is going to survive? I'm saying it because of the fact that he actually is playing a very important role in this process. And I know a lot of people can't understand that because they think he's so horrible. He's so incompetent. How can he possibly bring something good to this country? The way he's bringing something good to this country is by revealing the weaknesses. Because unless the weaknesses are revealed, you don't do anything to change it. You see? It's just like, I used to binge watch those house flipping shows. One of my favorite was Flipper Flop. And they would occasionally have a show where they had to they always like to replace the kitchens and bathrooms. And so sometimes when they did that, they would discover rotted, corroded pipes and leakage and, maybe lead, you got to take care of that too, if the pipes are made out of lead. And, like Legionnaire's disease can grow in corroded pipes. All kinds of disgusting things can grow in corroded pipes. And plus the fact that the leakage can lead to the growth of black mold. And so if they, and also if there's too much leakage, it can also impact the electrical system. And, you could end up with electrical fires. So there are a lot of problems that come from leaking corroded pipes. And so they would have to rip out the pipes, or if they also discovered corroded wiring, they'd have to rip that out too and replace it all before they could put the walls back up, And so a lot of times that's what you would see. You would see them replacing the floors and the walls. But first they would have to redo the bones, what's behind the walls, what's under the floor, what's above the ceiling, which is the pipes and the electrical wiring. And so the point is, if you're living in a house and it seems all perfectly fine, you turn on the faucet, the water runs, you turn on the lights come on, you may not even know that the pipes are corroded and leaking. You may not even know that black mold is growing in your house, or that the wiring, it could cause an electrical fire. You don't know until something goes wrong. And I lived in a house for a long time that had both of those problems. I lived there because I was a renter. So, and I was there with a roommate, and the rent was low. That's why I was there. But that house had both of those problems. So I'm happy I finally got out of there. But But it's the same with the nation, you know? It's like, unless we know that the pipes are corroded and leaking, the infrastructure is corroded and leaking, and there's potential for the growth of black mold, which is basically this down here in the fatherland right there. Unless we know that there's a problem with the structures, then we're not going to correct them. So he's part of he's actually part of the solution, because he is revealing the weaknesses in the system. So, you know, instead of being angry and feeling hatred or anything like that, I know we've talked about that before, you know, that like I've always said, I don't hate Donald Trump, because I don't think it's good to put that kind of energy out there into the world. So I really work on not being a hateful person. But you know, this is a way, I think, to bring some ease, is to understand that he is an absolutely essential part of this process of transformation and regeneration of our country and the revolution. He's an essential part of it, because he's revealing the weaknesses. So we should be thanking him for that, instead of wishing he were gone this instant. And I know you can't really help that, you know, when you see him say these crazy things that he says, it is hard not to get angry and wish he would just leave. But he's got to play an important role. That's why I don't think he's going to die. He will contract the illness, but he won't die, because he still has an important role to play in the transformation of our country and the revolution. All right, so I am looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about that. So please do, I'm waiting for my camera to kind of like, sometimes gets out of focus. So I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. Please leave them below. And like I said, if you do happen to go back and find some of my older videos that relate to the things I'm talking about this video, if you're willing to put that in the comments with a link, I think that would be extremely helpful to other viewers, and to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. And then the other thing I would say is, yeah, just leave your comments, because I know I brought up a lot in this video, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. And of course, as always, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and click like on this video, share with friends and family and on social media, and leave your comments. And I look forward to reading them all. And so that's it for today, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye. Oh, and just one more thing. Like I said, if you're wanting to do the astrology workshop, please sign up with the link below. And keep in mind that it's not just about learning astrology. It's also about being able to ask questions, because I get so many comments about, you know, asking questions, and this is a way for you to ask your questions and get more one-on-one personal time, and learn how to read the charts. So a lot of those questions you might be able to answer yourself in the future. And again, if you want a reading, you can always get a reading by itself or the workshop by itself. But if you buy them as a package, you'll get a discount on both. So I hope I'll see you there. Alrighty, so that's it for today, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.